join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. At this time at 7 p.m., the meeting of the Greensburg Redevelopment Commission is called to order. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. To comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the city requests that all participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table at the back of the room. JD, can we have roll call?
David Weigel, Darren Burkhart,
Here.
Ken Dornich,
Present.
Jamie Humpert,
Here.
Daryl Poling, Mark Bauer.
Here. Next item is approval of the February 2nd meeting minutes. Are there any corrections? If there aren't any corrections at the meetings, they stand approved as presented. On to old business. Mayor Marsh.
Good evening, board. As we talked about a couple months ago, you all had desired that we reach out to a couple commercial marketing firms to help with the property that you have on Veterans Way. And last month I talked to you about Lee & Associates and Bob Lindengren. Close enough? Okay, I told him I'd butcher it. Who's with us this evening, and I know last month we talked a little bit about his firm, but obviously he's the knowledge expert, so I'll turn it over to him and let him explain a little bit about the company and what he can offer, and then also answer any of your questions before he makes the trip back north. So Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I was reached out to by someone on the downtown beautification area who I've worked on a committee with at the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors. My board's service area also covers Decatur County, and Rose had the opportunity to interact with me for a couple of years on that committee. It is devoted at economic and community development, and is something that was reestablished within the Board of Realtors in the mid-1990s. The board had been active in participating in an effort between the Indianapolis Economic Development Group, the Builders Association, and the Board of Realtors in attracting United Airlines to a service facility that was to be constructed at the airport. And they kind of came up with a unique idea on how to fund that and create a situation that had Indianapolis stand apart from other communities that were competing at the time for that opportunity. And briefly, that package included sending ambassadors to the various United facilities around the country so that we could familiarize people with Indianapolis who were potential transfers in, bringing their engineering and mechanical skills along with them, as well as a group of people that then hosted visits, again, by potential United employees. Each group contributed $100,000 towards that effort, and the builders set up a referral fund for any new builds that came out of success with that, and the real estate brokerage community set up referrals for sales that came out of that. United chose Indianapolis in the late 80s. By 1992, that $100,000 had been recaptured with those referral fees. Interestingly, United employees, because we did a study afterwards, gravitated to a total of 27 counties within the central Indiana area. With the success of that, I was on the finance committee at the board at the time and was asked to co-chair, along with the then immediate past president of the board, looking at getting reactive in economic development. And the end result of that was that in 1995, the Economic Development Committee was formed, and the Board of Realtors made financial investments in each of the LEDOs within the service area. More recently, the focus of that has changed, and that's why the community word has been added to it. It's economic and community development, and the bulk of the investment made by the board is now on community development projects. This is where I met Rose. Economic development has been something that has been close to my heart since that initial exposure to it in the early 90s. What you're doing with the Redevelopment Commission is right in line with economic development. My assumption is that you're utilizing the ground that you have here to try and help jumpstart some other things, as well as have good results grow onto the ground. I'm a real estate broker. Commercial is our only practice. It's something that I've done for more years than I care to admit, and something that we've had a lot of enjoyment in doing and a lot of success with. I need to have some input from you. I've been through the comprehensive plan. By the way, my congratulations to the city for having that as updated as it is, because that was fairly recently passed. And it's a well-done document trying to help guide the future of Greensburg and the growth of Greensburg. That document would indicate that the target for the 19.8 acres that are comprised in the 4 parcels that Mayor Marsh made me aware of would be targeted potentially at multifamily. We've been through the community on a Sunday drive with my wife. Spent a couple hours getting re-familiar with it. Greensburg was about a 6-time-a-year drive-through for my wife and I when we had a son at Hanover. So it was nice to get re-familiar with it. And we have presented a potential listing contract. Does not have pricing in it. Pricing is going to be dictated by what type of product we're directing our focus on. And I'll be happy to give lots of input along the way in terms of what we think is possible and how to go about making the possible into something that's achievable. I brought a resume with me. I have copies for everybody if you would like, and I'm open for questions and input from you, both on me, my company, and backgrounds of each, as well as input from you on what the vision might be for these 4 individual parcels.
Any questions?
No, not really. What types of businesses would you foresee coming into those parcels? I know that's a throw at the wall thing here.
We've done some research on the market. Highest value, ground value would be devoting it, targeting it at retail. It's hampered by lack of traffic count, which is all a block or 2 away. It's also hampered by the fact that I've identified 486,000 square feet of retail in existence, in Greensburg that in all but one case has space available within it. Of that 486,000, 98,900 square feet are vacant. So you've got a 21% vacancy rate in that segment of the market that we identified. And again, we were looking for retail product that had vacancy in it. So my first goal was to get a handle on what the retail rental rates are, because that helps drive what is going to be achievable on the ground value side. So there's two impediments there with retail. Office has traditionally been geared towards the downtown in Main Street. Office is of the three main silos that are in my world. One is office, the second is retail, and the third is industrial in terms of space available devoted towards business pursuits. Multifamily would be the fourth silo. And office is in turmoil throughout not only the United States but the world due to what happened with the stay-at-home and then work from home that was caused by COVID. We think that that's going to modify significantly over the coming 24 months. We're not sure that that significant modification of only about 30% of the workforce actually going to an office on an everyday basis the modification of that will be enough for office space to fully satisfy the landlord side of the equation. And it's something that's playing out. Industrial is another possibility. There is ample opportunity for that to the west of this site. And you've got pockets of residential on the south side of the trail that would indicate we probably want to keep that industrial more to the west. So multifamily certainly was well received with the newer projects that have sprouted both right within that cluster and closer to 421 as it comes in off I-74. Product has been nicely done, well received based upon what we can observe of occupancy, cars in the parking spots, and furniture on the patios or porches or decks. And that, from a windshield perspective, would be my assessment of those four categories for you.
I think the traffic pattern or lack thereof is a chicken and egg situation.
There is no question about it. If Walmart had decided to be on the other side of State Road 3, then traffic out in front would be significantly different.
That Veterans Way has just recently opened up, so
Yes.
it hasn't been a through street for that long time. So I think that's kind of what Ken's pointing out. That it's been.
Well, in my compliments on the way that it was implemented, because it's very well done and is a very, very inviting street to travel on. So that investment will pay dividends to the community for years to come.
I'm an old EDC and retail person. I think of retail as both traditional retail and as restaurants, that type. There's been some talk over the years, on again, off again, about a Kroger type coming to town.
Mm-hmm.
I think something like that out there, again, would drive traffic, feed the housing situation also.
There is no question of that. and there are studies that we can tap into that can help determine whether we'll have the opportunity to get Kroger's ear. There not only are the traditional kinds of studies that observe what the sales per square foot are, but also there's newer technology out, a company called Placer AI that has anonymous cell phone data, and they track visits, unique visits based upon individual cell phones. They track how long that visit lasts. They track where else in the shopping center or in the shopping area that unique phone may have gone, and then aggregate that data and provide it to their subscribers. And between the sales per square foot, which again, my family was in the grocery business for a long, long time. And I categorize by the number of cars in front of the store, what kind of opportunity that store has to ring the cash register, and that Walmart has got to be a top performer in the state of Indiana, I would think.
We've also become about the only store in town.
That's the boon and the bane of Walmart, is that, yes, they offer good value and because of their buying power, but they also, on the flip side of that same coin, have a tendency to drive away some of the smaller competitors that may have filled several of the niches, because it's not just food, it's all of the other categories that they have the opportunity for that enormous buying power to price things at or below what someone else can do, and it makes it difficult for the other retailers, no question.
Any other questions?
Bob, when you and I had talked on the phone, you had talked about Lee and Associates' ability to market much wider than just this area. Can you expound upon that?
Thank you, be happy to. In my career, I've been with a small boutique firm that then merged with a larger semi-boutique firm that had a national affiliation. And I learned a lesson in my first listing presentation, because with a small boutique firm, I would spend the first 5 or 6 minutes simply explaining who we were, because we were small and we didn't have a lot of exposure. I went to start explaining who, after that merger, the company was to the prospective client. They said, "Oh, we know you, and tell us about you." Lee and Associates is 67 offices spread from coast to coast. It has all of the benefits of a national firm. It has each of the major silos that I spoke of a moment ago covered well. Some offices do better in some facets than others do. Lee and Associates is unique from the standpoint that we are a national company, but each of our offices is locally owned. National has an investment in each of those local offices, but the ownership of the company is, for my firm, in Indianapolis, and for Lee Chicago, it's in Chicago. Lee Cincinnati is located, the owners are located in Cincinnati. The benefit, we believe, to the customer is that when you have local ownership, you don't have to go very far to get to the head of the company, and therefore we can be much more responsive whenever any kind of issue comes up. And because the head of the company is close to what the brokers on the street are doing, we can be very proactive in making sure that things run smoothly and run well. So we bring the benefit of a national company and all of the potential referral business that creates. In the retail sector, that is significant because the retailers very often are the same. A Starbucks in Seattle and a Starbucks in Greensburg is the same Starbucks, but that real estate office for Starbucks, that's not located in Indiana. So those contacts come from brokers that work within that market, and so that helps us extend our reach to areas that we might not have been able to get to without that national affiliation. Be happy to expand on that, or
one question I have is kind of walk us through, if we were to enter into this agreement, what would be kind of your next steps?
Yes. Number one, signage. Everything in real estate works better with a sign because that's the one opportunity to capture somebody that is doing what I did when I came in to look at the community, and that's doing a windshield inspection. And so that applies not only to the locals, but for someone like me who is not local, but trying to get familiar with the community. That's rather mundane, everybody does that. The electronic exposure that we'll provide is one, through the Lee National website. Second, we file everything with a company called CoStar, C-O-S-T-A-R. They're the ones that generated the statistics for me on the available retail. CoStar is national in scope, and they are targeted only at brokers, developers, and economic development professionals. It is for the dissemination of data to the people that have to know. CoStar has been very successful at that, and they recently bought LoopNet. LoopNet is the outward-facing electronic side of CoStar, and LoopNet is pushing things through the internet on all things commercial. It has no involvement with residential property. It is solely for commercial. Crexy is another national firm that has both interior and exterior looking internet access. They too promote through to the public, in addition to having broker and developer access to information. Each of those two have other tentacles that push out, like office space, city feet, that are all public facing, and just additional areas to capture eyeballs towards any given property that somebody may be searching for. Member of Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors, so information would be disseminated there. ICBR, which is the Indiana Commercial Board of Realtors, picks up data from some of the other data sources so that they can have a fully functional source of information. And we utilize those outreach items, which is all kind of passive from the broker's perspective. You've put the information in, and you're waiting for data or responses to come back to you. On the active side, we engage constant contact. On the retail side, for Central Indiana, we've got a little over 1,800 email addresses that are user-oriented, developer-oriented, broker-oriented, so that we can push data out to them, which we do on a routine basis. Something like this property would be out on a every 2 to 3 week basis. We don't want to become annoying to the audience, but we do want to be in front of the audience when the phone is rung and that retailer has told that broker that, hey, we're coming back to Indianapolis and surrounds, and we'd like to take a look at properties. So we do the traditional brokerage things, the data and the outreach that the data provides through the internet, and then we push towards the logical users of the land or representatives of those users on an outreach basis with constant contact.
Good enough. I don't know that we have any more questions at this time.
Costs? And I will say, I've reviewed the purchase agreement that Bob submitted. It's currently, there's no specific price because we don't know exactly what we're pricing or why. It's based off of a percentage, a commission. It was very standard. There was nothing problematic or otherwise out of what I would deem to be the ordinary for a commercial brokerage agreement. So.
The mayor had indicated that the Redevelopment Commission might want to be aggressive in terms of dealing with a particular user to capture their attention and get them on board. So the way I designed that standard listing contract, which you did a good job of describing, was to establish, when it comes time, what we think the market value is and establish the listing side of the brokerage fees on what that market value would be. That frees the commission, if you want to be aggressive in terms of utilizing the land as a hook to bring the fish on board, to do so, and it doesn't disincentivize us to continue hustling to get the job done for you. And it was designed as a half fee. We would typically do a 6% fee and offer 3% to the broker representing the buyer of the ground. And that side of the fee, because of the potential to be aggressive on price, has not been established, and we can work with you on guidance on how to set that up so that it works well, number one, and number two, doesn't act as a disincentive to the broker that typically works with, to pick a name I've already used, Starbucks. And sometimes those brokers come with their own sense of what their value is, which sometimes exceeds 3%, so that leaves the door open to have some negotiation on that as well.
Lisa, I just had one quick thing. So do you have like a go-to client list that you would market any of these things to, or would these all be unique businesses, like mom and pop type of retail, or would you be marketing also to the larger retail nationwide type of?
If retail becomes the target, it is. We are within that 1,800 emails that I mentioned. You'll have the director of real estate for Kroger, whose office is in Indianapolis. You'll have the regional director for Starbucks, and everything in between the Starbucks 2,000 to 3,000 square foot building and Kroger's 100,000 square foot building. All of the national players are contained within that list. And where they have established relationships with brokers, we make sure that the brokers are included in that list, because frequently it will be the foot on the ground, the broker that will help drive getting that regional real estate officer into the area to physically take a look at things.
Okay.
And yes, as we come across the ma and pas, they get added to.
Yeah.
Sometimes they unsubscribe, but we try to capture that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like copies of this?
Yes, please.
I thank you very much for the opportunity to present and the opportunity to work on what I think are an exciting opportunity to help grow Greensburg. Compliment you on what you have done to date with the community. It had been more than a decade since we've been through and refamiliarizing ourselves with it a couple of Sundays ago. It was a delightful trip. So appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there isn't necessarily a decision to be made unless you want to enter into an agreement with him tonight. If you want to take it, consider it, table it, think of more questions, we can do that as well. Or if there's something else I can help with in the next month to get other questions answered, but there's no timeline per se. So
It's the board's flavor.
I'm good with it. I'll make a motion, how to phrase this, that we engage the associates in helping to market Veterans Way.
Second.
As a caveat to that, does your motion include permission for either, be Dr. Weigel, right? Permission for Dr. Weigel to execute the purchase, the brokerage contract that was discussed?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Next,
Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ron.
Good evening. Before I start with my part of the agenda, I'd like to do a public service announcement. The city live streams all meetings and records them for viewing by the public in future. Your microphones are not live all the time. They're only working when the red light at the base of the microphone comes on. So when you sit back away from the desk or push your microphone up and away, you don't always get properly recorded. So to improve our product to our residents, just be conscious of that, please. Residential development project, I have not heard anything further from the developer since we spoke last month. To my knowledge, their schedule is still to complete by the early part of April, complete the primary plat submittal and make that plat submittal before the end of March, and therefore be on the Plan Commission's agenda for their May meeting. There was the discussion during that you were a part of about the lift station. I spoke with Zeke Smith, our wastewater superintendent, yesterday or today. He has not heard anything further back from them, so that's still kind of a technical topic that needs some more consideration by our wastewater utility. Hopefully think as I remember, Darren, not to put words in your mouth, but you weren't all fired up about the idea of the fiberglass wet well. And maybe that idea has been passed by now, I'm not sure, I simply haven't heard anymore.
I'm concerned about how long it will last. Obviously they believe it's a cheaper alternative, but they may be cheap for a reason, so.
Yes, and I'm not so sure they didn't compare that to a cast-in-place wet well as opposed to a precast, which has got to be more economical all the way around, especially in some soil conditions that are going to be wet. So, no other news at the moment. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I probably won't have great answers tonight.
There's something about in the meeting minutes about a title transfer mortgage.
Yeah, and I need to get with their attorney to get that finished. I'm still working on it. It's just, we have to do the initial construction mortgage, and then they'll do all the platting process, and then we'll do the secondary mortgage once all of the individual parcels have been identified.
Does that have to be done before they go, okay.
No, because we filed it as a joint request.
The rezoning was filed as a joint request.
Right.
The plat hasn't been filed yet, so that's an open question.
That's correct, yes. So, but I anticipate that it'll be done well before the April submission, which will be necessary for the May meeting.
So within the upcoming month, you think we can have that behind us? Okay.
What's next on your list here?
The working group consisting of Ken and Daryl and the mayor and myself has met and discussed revisions to project lists. There has been 3 or 4 items added. And actually this evening I kind of cleaned up part of that revised list, sent it back to the working group. I think we will meet one more time with the idea that the group is ready to report back to the full commission next month.
If anyone has ideas, please submit them. If anyone has ideas, send them.
Still not too late, might be in a month. Actually, you all will have the opportunity when it comes before you to modify it as you feel appropriate. It then goes to the city council for final approval, I believe, Chris? So we're still a couple months away from having an officially revised list. And I think that only has to appear once before council. It's not like an ordinance.
Multi-use path?
So we had talked last month about the possibility of establishing multi-use path from Veterans Way into the more central part of the city, with the idea of can we find a way to get across 3 that's truly safe for pedestrian traffic. We met today with a consultant and discussed this topic with them and asked for a proposal on a feasibility study for doing such a thing, and indicated to them that we would like to have their proposal like a week before your next meeting so we can kind of review it and digest it and bring it to you for your consideration at that time.
Should look for something next month on that?
Should.
Anything else?
I don't believe so unless you all have questions of me.
We'll move on to new business. Amy?
Yes. Good evening. After last month's meeting, Ron let me know that there were some questions about combining some of the funds or just some other options that you were interested in as far as the finances go. So I looked into a couple things, but I think what I need to know is what you want to do.
I'm probably the one that was guilty of this. I was looking through it, and I'll give you my take. It just looked like we had some funds that there hadn't been any movement in them for several, and it kind of looked like it was just kind of dead money sitting there.
Yes. So I think you're talking about 9966 and 67. So those are both bonds out of the Bank of New York. I say bonds. There's an account at the Bank of New York, 2 accounts. What I think we can do is declare that they are dormant. Thank you. The word just left me. But it will be through an ordinance process to do that, and then we would need to get those funds and then decide where those need to be transferred. If that is something that you are interested in, I can look into that and possibly bring that to you next month. I believe as an ordinance, though, it would need to go in front of the council. But you would see it before we would take it to them.
What about 6681 fund?
So those two go together, and I believe they're your Veterans Way. And I think Gary would be able to better answer you because I think he was involved in the process of that.
One's just project fund account balance, and then the other is your debt service reserve. So when you issue bonds, you'll set up debt service reserve. So those have to stay there until it's retired.
So we're only really talking about this Bank of New York.
The last two, the Bank of New York ones. Okay. I will look more into that and see what our next steps need to be other than the ordinance to declare them dormant. Any other questions that you have for me while I'm here? Okay.
I'm starting to understand a little better.
Okay, me too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Gary?
Good evening, Gary Smith, Reedy Financial Group. I've got 2 documents in front of you. One is entitled Financial Update, one is entitled April Reporting Requirement. I won't cover much in the financial update, just briefly for your information. As you guys know, we're contractually obligated to give biannual plan updates. This is a good opportunity to do that, so I went ahead and distributed your financial update alongside your April reporting requirement. So the one that's labeled April reporting requirement, it's a 13-page document, and this covers all of your reporting requirements essentially for the year. Page 3, if you're interested in reading, has all the reporting requirements in detail. April 1st, Clerk Treasurer's annual report to the Redevelopment Commission. That's what this is. There's information that we're required to submit to the fiscal and executive body as well. And you can see all the items that we're required to report on. That is what this report is. So all those items will be covered this evening. Annual meeting presentation to all overlapping units. That's to be done by 12/31. We'll do that later this year. And then down at the very bottom, June 15th determination on excess AV. We'll do that prior to June 15th. And then finally, your TIF neutralization, which is the process for certifying the TIF assessed value, and it's ultimately how this board receives dollars. So moving on to page 4, this is part of the reporting requirement. It goes over all the commissioners' officers from last year, all the overlapping taxing units, as you can read through. And then down at the very bottom, it highlights your actual TIF allocation areas and when the declaratory resolution dates were signed, when we project those TIF areas to expire. So if there's ever any questions about, how long are we going to be collecting revenue and increment on these properties, those expiration dates are where you would refer to. Page 5, not part of the reporting requirement necessarily, just good information to have. This is your month-by-month cash projection, or I guess in hindsight, that's actual data from 2022. We're tracking the fund balance from your State Road 3 corridor allocation area on a monthly basis, January through December. You can see the revenues and capital outlays, debt service payments, things of that sort that are coming out. Thing to highlight there, just over 2.4 million ending cash balance, up from 2.1 million in 2022 at the beginning of the year. Page 6 is really where the rubber meets the road. This is a detailed version of 2022 at a 30,000 foot look. You'll see the beginning cash balance there. You'll see all the revenues, miscellaneous revenues, TIF revenue collections, grants, etc. And then down the expenditure list, you can see all the things that were expended last year. So again, ending the year just north of 2.4 million there, and about $700,000 in annual surplus. Page 7, that's the State Road residential housing allocation area. No increment there, so nothing to report on. Page 8, RDC contracts, not currently tracking any contracts for 2022. Page 9, as we mentioned before, this is where we have to report on your debt-related bond funds. So you'll see we're tracking those 4 funds there that we just mentioned. And then up at the top, you'll see the final maturity dates and the amount of debt that was outstanding on those obligations in 2022, how much was paid in 2022. All that's required to be reported on, so all that information is there for your review. Page 10 through 13, if you were interested in seeing the detailed parcel list for all the parcels that we're actually capturing value on, this is where you would go. This is all real property. You can see you got property type there, our taxpayer name, the gross assessment, net assessment, how much the overlapping units, the city, town, county, et cetera, are collecting on, and then how much the AV we're actually capturing due to new construction or abatement roll-offs or things of that sort. So that's the reporting requirement in a nutshell. This entire document will be uploaded to the DLGF website prior to the 15th of April. So all that will be on there. The parcel list will be on there. We'll take care of that. We'll work with Amy on the submission. That's the reporting requirement. The only thing that I would want to go over on the financial update document, it's essentially the exact same thing. It's just a snapshot of what 2023 and 2024 look like. So page 5 of the financial update, you'll see 2023, 2024 month-over-month projections and how we project the allocation area to grow, the known expenditures as of today, and obviously opportunities as we move along. So we'll continue to be in touch with this board, with Mayor, with Ron on projects as they're coming on, updating the projections accordingly and reflecting that within your financial update. Again, page 6, that's your kind of more comprehensive look at this State Road 3 allocation area. It's got 2 years of historical data. It's got 2 years of projected data. Just much more detailed, again, from a 30,000-foot look there. You can see what cash is doing over time there as well. So that's the only thing I would point you to on financial update.
Does that include the housing, or the housing?
So the housing TIF is a separate allocation area, but you're correct. Once that allocation area begins to receive revenue, it has to be separated into its own fund. So we'll be tracking that on its own ledger.
This list of parcels, is that just for the State Road 3? That's not like the housing or the, what is the heritage?
We'll report on both, so this should be both. Whenever we report it. Yeah.
What about the heritage?
The Heritage Hills. We're not reporting on that one yet because your base was 2022. So that one will be reported on until the ensuing year. But yeah, you're right, the other two will be. Which we're actually, we're working with the county on that right now. The Heritage Hill allocation area process was completed in 2022. We're still working with the county on making sure the base assessment data is correct, because the base assessment data is January 1, 2022, pay 2023, and as of the way it's currently sitting, they're making it 1/1/2023. So we're working with them on updating their system to include that last year, since you completed the process before, after certification. But we'll handle that behind the scenes. Any other questions on the financial update? Did you want me to cover the 1085? Okay. Just quickly, Mayor asked me to talk about House Bill 1085. I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It was a House bill that went through this session, or didn't go through this session. I should be. It's officially no longer. But there were some things in that House bill that potentially would have been detrimental to redevelopment commissions, requiring 5% pass-through, requiring a spending plan by December of each year for redevelopment commissions, mandatory pass-through assessed value for revenues that weren't encumbered by debt obligations, only spending money based on what's in the plan. So if you had someone approach the board mid-year, you would be able to approve an expenditure for different things without it being in your plan from the year prior. And then a declaratory resolution if you guys actually wanted to spend money outside of an allocation area. Right now, the way the statute's written, you can spend money outside the allocation area as long as it benefits or serves that area, and this will require more onerous, more process for that. And there was a lot of redundancies in policy based on things that already exist as well, but there's no issues there. It's no longer going through, so I just wanted to give you an update there.
It's dead, officially dead.
Yep.
Good news.
That's good. Well, we will probably see you guys, or we will see you guys next, if not sooner, during the June meeting, potentially the May meeting for your pass-through, TIF pass-through. That'd be nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Next on the agenda is approving claims for March. We have a claim from Reedy, a claim from Stephen Legal Group, and then our 5 for the stormwater. So total of the claims is $2,360.18. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second it. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Our next meeting is set for April 6th, but is there any other questions from the audience?